To start with, salute to our security forces. We are here within a week of the last attack that happened at the LOC, and we are here together. That's being resilient, right? So resilience is required whether we are at the LOC or in our enterprises. All familiar with the screen? With the collective intelligence that we have in this room, we did not see it coming. It was an unknown in that security metrics, risk metrics that we talk about, right? And it was devastating for almost 8.5 million machines that went down across the globe. What if it was a malware attack? Hardware will possibly crash. The softwares will be possibly going down. And it's just a software, right? It can always go down. How do you really build a resilience around this? While we talk about resilience, we don't really think of the endpoints. For quite a few of you in the room, you will have thousands of endpoints that are spread across either in India or outside India. While we look at putting across the layers of security, we always look at putting across resilience at the center, at the core of your data center. That's on your server and storage. But what about the endpoints? It's normally pretty complicated to manage endpoints. With the numbers that you see, we talk about AI, we are actually traversing a very different journey, all of us, for AI. But 92% of the PCs are not AI ready today. We are there in the market for last 30 years, and that's why we can speak about this. 83% of the organization today are not sure that the ex-employees can access the data, all the important data of yours. And that can be an ex-insider threat. 14% of all your EDDs, XDRs that you put in are normally not patched. For a lack of devices, for some of the banks out here, they're talking about 24,000 devices not being patched. And that could be a gateway for the next cyber attack. So with all that in mind, lack of resilience is always expensive. 44 million was the average that Fortune 500 companies spend across within some 6-7 days of coming back from the BSOD event. 5 million on an average for a breach, 10x is what the cost is. Is a long tail of recovery is what we are discussing here. And that's why cyber security and cyber resilience have to be there in a continuum all the time. And that was actually covered by the first session itself, Prateek, right? And that's very important in a sense that Gartner today says that all of your security and risk management professionals should be embedding resilience in the core of the system. So when you say system, our understanding is everything is software defined, put across in the software when you are developing. What about the system it's running it on? And that's where we start. We are absolute security. For last 30 years that we are there in the market, we started basically just working with some of the OEMs, tracking, tracing all the important assets for the colleges. We are now with 28 OEMs, all of them. So all of you in the room, whichever enterprise, whichever OEM that you're using, all those 28 OEMs, we've got them covered. So we are present in every endpoint, that is a desktop, notebook, be a Chromebook as well. We also support MacBook, by the way. But we are present in the firmware. So anything that is born in firmware, what is the advantage? That we start our services even before the OS loads up. And that's different, right? So we are always like a submarine under the radar. So 20,000 odd customers with about 18 million devices under our management. We've got 3.1 billion every day. That's the touch points that we get. So anything that we possibly settle down, right? So when we activate this code, it then creates an agent that sits across on the OS, on the top of the OS, which remains undeletable. Okay? You check basically what you can possibly do. Flush the OS, re-image the device, or you could also possibly look at a hard drive swap. And then you figure out the endpoint is gone from your network. But we can rebuild ourselves, reheal ourselves, and build it on the agent in the new OS or on the new hard drive. And that's the advantage that we can bring in. with all these 3.1 billion pings that happen, the device is now creating an undeletable tether between the device and our secured operation centers, right? And that possibly gives you the truth, the absolute truth. The absolute secure endpoint that we have has got endpoint telemetry that can then give you close to 1,000 odd data points that you can pick and choose for all your administrators, figure out where is it geolocated. You can even geo-freeze the device from a control perspective. You can actually look at how do you really manage the entire hardware fleet, entire software that is sitting across, the applications that are there. We can go into the nitty-gritties of even a hardware where you have a laptop sitting across in front of you, pick up the hard drive, pick up the partition, we can get into those details, right? Then the control. I just heard somebody speaking about geofencing. We can geofence all the devices as good as in the premises. We can geolocate these devices as good as 20 meters from your nearest router. That's where we pick up the geolocation. And we've been working across, that's our core competency. We can freeze the devices, we can wipe the devices. So imagine the device is stolen, we can straight out wipe the device. A freeze is something where you can basically render it almost like a brick that you can't really come out. Whatever the attacker can try to do, you will possibly rebuild ourselves on that, right? When it is as good as wipe, the data that sits across on all your endpoints is worth millions of dollars. We also have hardware hardening, all the critical applications. I've got a couple of charts coming up, all of them. We can reheal ourselves. On the top of it, we can reheal all these critical controls. So when somebody's taking the control down, we can rebuild that, repair and recover. 80 plus applications, I have not covered all of them, but that's what we can make, we can persist along with our persistent software that we can reheal ourselves. Some of these you must be using, a stack of it that you'll be using. And why is it really important? Why is cyber resilience important? While we discuss everything from a resilience perspective, which is software defined today, everything that sits across sits on the top of the OS. The OS goes down, everything will come down crashing. But then, if it is a device, which is from a firmware, if anything that builds across on the top of it, that's where we can then recover the devices and even recover these applications for that matter, right? Imagine an attacker that goes across inside a system. What is he trying to do? He's basically making sure that he remains under the surface for a 4 to 6 days of reconnaissance phase that runs across. They will look at ensuring that they are completely untraceable in the network with all the security vendors that you have, all the magic quadrants that you have. The reconnaissance phase on an average lasts for 277 days. That means an attack, before an attack, it remains undetectable for 277 days. What if somebody taking a BitLocker down or your EPP down, what if we can then give you that insight that there is somebody trying to tamper with the system, that's your gateway, and then you can then build it up. If you can then recover that particular BitLocker on that particular endpoint, the hacker cannot move forward. Imagine the case of BSOD or a ransomware attack that happens on a system. The only thing that you can do is you can basically ask your employees to work on the DOS prompt. That's pretty difficult to do, right? In a Gen AI case, going back to the DOS prompt. Either you can ship these devices back to where the IT can fix them, or you can go in person with a USB thumb drive and go fix those 1,000 odd devices. That is difficult, right? What we can do is we can do bare metal recovery. The space that I come from, BCDR space and DR automation space and cyber security, bare metal recovery, that is when the OS is not present in a remote device anywhere in the continent. Rebuilding that is the most difficult thing that people can do. And that's where we add value.
Absolute Security's persistent software is included in the firmware for hundreds of millions of devices worldwide. When enabled, this code is loaded prior to the operating system, providing a unique means to intervene and complete a remediation task to fix a faulty piece of software or deal with a malware infection. In this scenario, a playbook that can add or remove files from the drive is configured to remove a file that is preventing a laptop from booting normally. We begin with a video showing a device that has been stuck in a blue screen of death loop and needs remediation, but this could just as easily be a device infected with malware. Moving to the secure endpoint console where the device was previously enrolled, we can see that extended resilience below the OS remediation is enabled for the device. This allows us to simply run a playbook to fix the issue without having to ship the device back to the operations center. The administrator selects which playbook to run and fills in the required parameters. In this case, delete the offending update file and reboot the system. On the broken endpoint, the user interrupts the boot cycle prior to the OS attempting to load. This prompts for the unique extended resilience password available from the console, which can be communicated to the end user by phone or text message. Once validated, the playbook is downloaded from the console and executed locally. In this case, the bad update file is removed and the device is rebooted successfully.
So no one else can do that because we are born in firmware, because in the boot sequence, we start our services before the OS is booted. That's where we can add value. Otherwise, it'll just keep on going in the loop, right? That is what we saw in the BSOD event. So we've got these playbooks that we can go and surgically remove a faulty code, or you can remove a malware that is there and then again restart the system. Not only that, we can then have a workbook that we can then re-hide this system with a golden image of yours. So what we are then building across with the privileged position that we have, which is embedded in the firmware, is the whole stack, starting from endpoint resilience. Then we look at application resilience. We talked about how do we do hardening of the endpoints as much. Access resilience. So now that you have a complete visibility, complete control, and hardening that has happened across, if you then take the laptop across somewhere and go, and if that possibly has a network that is compromised, then how do you really manage? So we've got secure services that possibly we call it SA. That's something that is part of another pillar that we then do. And then we also can do as good as scanning all your systems, because the continuum is very important. We can do patch management, we can do third-party patch management, we can even ensure remediation of sorts, right? So with all that we are building up, that's the stack that you have. And imagine with the entire stack that you're seeing, you can wake up a machine that is sitting across in a closet, if it has battery left, and then fix a patch and then shut it. And even better, you can, in fact, with the golden image that you were loaded across on the endpoint, what is we can then load a file and folder onto that. And that's where you can recover the entire end system for. So again, the gateways of the attacks that basically start with endpoints, that's where we play a very, very strong role. And finally, my last slide. Security compliance is extremely important. That's been something that is discussed since morning. And for a block level, if you have to look at, is the endpoint visibility control hardening that we do. We can do ransomware response. We can do certain things that probably there are quite a few players who cannot do because of our position. But at the end of it all, compliance matters to all of you, CIOs, CTOs, CISOs in the room. We were present in GDPR right from May 2018. That's where we started helping our customers. We can basically help at-risk devices. We have EDD, that is all your endpoints, anywhere possibly they're sitting across. We can do data discovery. And what can we achieve out of that? All your PIIs, all your PHIs, all of your PCI DSS data, that is the most sensitive data that sits across on your laptop. If it gets stolen, we can then pick that data up, figure out where the data resides, we can wipe that. We can wipe file and folders, we can wipe the entire device. So say somebody is saying that I want my laptop is compromised, we can go and wipe that entire device to a level that you just cannot get back that data. It's a crypto wipe that we can do. Finally, the DPDP compliance, which is extremely important. That's where this crypto wipe will be important. Every device that you wipe, you can get a NIST 888 certificate that you can get across from the console real-time basis. And then just to give you an example of HIPAA compliance, like there are quite a few compliances, regulations that you have to operate. A PHI protection that can happen, SCCM, AV, encryption, all of these can reheal themselves. And with that, you can then also achieve a HIPAA standard or regulations, right? So that's the compliance that I was talking about. And that's my last slide, right? So that's what we do as Absolute Security, build the resilience on all of your endpoints. They're spread across in the world. Thank you.